welcome back to Innovate Africa. You must know me by now, but if you don't, I'm Kino Cunnies, and essentially I chat to people, leaders in industry, who impact lives through innovation. So what is marketing? What does that have to do with impacting lives? Well, it depends what you're marketing, of course. And traditionally, marketing is push, and we'll talk to Per Lagerström, who is a man who has varied experience, works on boards, advises many big boards, but has also grown his own businesses in this particular field using artificial intelligence. Per Lagerström, what a pleasure to always chat to you. And, before we decided to do this interview, I was thinking about the impact side of things, because the show is impact first. And traditionally, when we talk about marketing, we talk about pushing products on people. But the technologies you work with, I would imagine, could also go for services that people might need. Because the bottom line with what you do is getting a base understanding, a deep understanding, as a matter of fact, from the audience that you're targeting. Am I right?
Yeah. First of all, it's good to be here, Kino. So we'll still have a chat.
Yeah.
For a long time, marketing has been about influencing consumers to buy my product. The data we've had for that is very crude. A survey, a focus group, sales data with a long lag.
Right.
So that means that we deployed campaigns and resources and media spend without truly knowing whether it works or not.
Yeah.
With the tech that we have now, which is, let's call it, windows into the mind of the consumer.
Right.
We can understand what floats their boat in almost real time with very high precision and low cost. That breakthrough fundamentally changes the way we could do marketing. And that's what we call AI-first marketing. So that simply means if I could bookend marketing at two ends of the production process of influencing content.
Right.
One is to understand the emotions that drive sales.
Right.
Will we influence those or not? And that means that a new generation of predictive trackers, I have a proxy for sales.
Yeah.
I can model whether my campaign is going to move sales or not. That's piece number one.
Right.
Piece number two is I can now pre-test campaigns, messages, UX, a video, a commercial, a slogan, whatever it might be. I can test it with the consumer before I invest in it. So that means I can measure whether it impacts sales or not indirectly through modern predictive trackers, and I can pre-test whatever I invest. Now I have the two breakthroughs that allows me to do marketing in a fundamentally different way.
So from the business side, if one just looks at spend, I am the marketer. I want people to consume my products, or I want to know whether the service that I'm going to provide is something that the community will accept, for example.
Yeah.
The bottom line here is you get to understand the target market using scientifically backed technology, which is AI driven. Bottom line.
Yeah. You see, the brutal reality now is we can analytically model consumer intent. And because we can do that, it just changes the game. Because if I have ability to model consumer intent almost on tap at very low cost, I can reinvent the marketing model. And CMOs always wanted to do it.
Yes.
But the tools weren't there. It was too clunky, it was too much delays, too much lags. I couldn't build the flywheel that you typically see in a business where I invest something, I produce something, and I find out whether it worked or not in a very closed loop. That's how business operates. Marketing could never do that. Now, marketing could in effect be a sales machine.
All right. So tell me a story.
My story.
I want you to tell me a story. Give me an example of how this actually works in the real world.
How it works in the real world, we're working with a listed company at this point in time, where the CMO is very progressive and is under two pressures. One is deliver more growth and do more with less. To date, they've thrown a lot of AI tools at that problem, but it's had a lack of coherence.
Sure.
The insight for the CMO was actually with the new tools, I can actually reinvent my operating model for marketing. So practically, that means that they have a predictive tracker that measures love, trust, loyalty, how exciting the product is. They measure that every quarter in the same cadence as the business performance against 5 competing brands at very low cost. Then they target every spend against those emotions, knowing that if they shift emotions, they shift sales. That's piece number 1 in this. The second is they will not do a campaign or a message or even a UX journey on the web and the app without pre-testing it with consumers. It means that they save on both sides. That sheer change unlocks a wave of innovation at these clients. It's super exciting.
Listen, I always go back to my media days. I'm still in media, but I'm thinking my traditional radio days. And I honestly, personally think certain aspects of radio, the days are numbered. People aren't consuming even television the way young people aren't consuming it the way we used to.
Yeah.
But I remember those focus groups. You know, you get a bit of knickknacks and some tea, and you chat to 10 people. And
Sit behind a window.
sit behind a window, and you hope what's coming out of their mouths is actually genuine, right? This is different. So I'm very keen to dig into the technology that allows you to do it in layman's terms, of course, because, you know, if I think about the 15 people in the room, there was absolutely no way for me to figure out whether any BS was happening throughout this. You, however, can pick all of that up. You've measured the various emotions, etc. But the big question is, how do you go about doing that? What's the technology that you use?
Yeah. Look, the reason a focus groups looks like the way it does historically is for sheer practical reasons. I want to get some qual data on how my consumers thinks. The best way to do that is get 5 people in one room instead of going and interviewing 5 people in different locations. With tech, I can now have a digital conversation with thousands of consumers. Thousands. So the topic that we discuss in a focus group of 5 people, I can now ask 5,000 people in a digital interview.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing, right? And I can now use, and they answer questions with voice, video, or text. And now through the tech, I can understand how they really feel. I can score emotions like love, hate spectrums from -100 to +100. I can double click on those for 5,000 people and say why they love or why they hate the experience or the brand or whatever it is. That's the game changer.
How do you pick up the whyver? I find that to be interesting. It's one thing to say there's a marker that shows a negative emotion towards that stimuli that you put in front of them. How do you know the why?
Because first of all, you need to have real science around conversations built into this. It's not just any conversations. Actually, in the business I'm talking about, almost the most important person involved here is not the AI architect, it's the theater director. The scripts conversations with consumers that makes everybody feel like we're having a chat. And in any chat, we always ask each other, that was interesting. Why did you think that? And then why? And then you just use the AI, depending what happens in the voice, what happens in the words spoken, what happens with emotional reaction. AI will deduct and understand what really was going on. That's a classic application of AI at scale for a very targeted one, which is creating an understanding from, say, 5,000 consumer conversations. How do they truly think and feel in a way which is quantified, but double click on the same quantification into the why, double click on the why into an action framework, and suddenly you have a co-pilot for marketeers, not a replacement for marketeers. That debate is already outdated, but this is about giving marketeers tools that allows them to do much more with much less, with less friction and less frustration. It doesn't replace them, it augments them. It is absolutely amazing what we can do now. And this year is when we go from incoherence to coherence. Last year, we throw tools, AI tools, smarter content production, better video production. We will continue to do that. But what brings coherence into it is we go back to good old business thinking, which means if I got a screwed up process, don't throw technology to the screwed up process. Fix the process. So that why we're using the term AI first marketing, because we're redesigning it from the ground up for this world. And you get true consumer co-creation.
I really like that. Now, you talk about 5,000 people. I mean, how pragmatic would that be? So you might be watching this and going, okay, but 5,000 people, do they all sit on, one of those platforms that we sit on when we have our meetings? How do you get hold of these 5,000 people? Is it one person that does the interview, or are you making a digital twin of someone so that when they go in, they have a conversation with that digital twin / avatar? I mean, how does that work pragmatically?
Pragmatically, it works. That is digital conversation. So it happens on a phone. This is not strapping people up in a lab. It just happens on a mobile phone. And consumers have a conversation either with an avatar or even with a form, where questions are being put in front of them and videos or Figma of a UX journey or a slogan is being put in front of them. And they answer questions around this with voice, video, text, whatever they want. So they can talk to it, they can record themselves sharing with it, or they can choose to sit and tap it in. And it could be 500 consumers, it could be 5,000. Actually, the machine doesn't care if it's 1 million.
Yeah.
And the consumer comes from either clients' databases or from public panels where actually people share their views and they get a voucher in return. So there's a proliferation of these panels and everything else. And what we do through our businesses, we just draw on existing panels and communities and just have conversations. And the AI does the interpretation. Consumers love it. It's very short. Can have an extensive deep dive into something in 10 or 15 minutes. The data is unbelievably rich. And it mixes quant and qual. So the board is told the love score from -100, which is hate, to +100, which is love, or mistrust to trust.
Right.
We're 60 on love, but we're 20 on trust. Why aren't we 60 on trust? Double click on that. The why is coming out of the data, and then it says what you do. Now you got recommendation and it's on the back, and the marketeer says actually the trust building actions required to do is X, Y, Z. Now I can focus my spend.
Very fascinating. So we tend to take the capitalist look. There's nothing wrong with capitalism. I'm a big capitalist myself. I have a social conscience. So let me say the United Nations Development Program. They need to spend $100 million on providing services or support to a particular community, but they need to make sure that the community is on board and that that community sees value before they spend the money, right? Because technology, as we know, is only as good as the human system you deploy it into, and that human system is not accepting of. And someone thinks, no, don't trust this AI thing, it's going to fail, right? So a UNDP, for example, could stand to lose lots of money by deploying something which people don't readily accept. Could it be used in that situation?
Yeah, there's no difference. You just need to be very clear on what the outcome is that you see.
Right.
Outcome for retailer is sales. Outcome for a subscription program is signing up and retaining people on subscription. In this case, it is about acceptance or trust. Could be trust.
Yes.
Actually, in this case, you would use the technology to baseline what it is today. You would set a target, what you want that outcome to be. You would actually simulate, will the investment do that or not? You will go and do the investment and you will measure afterwards. And suddenly UNDP has a learning loop on their interventions, which is, what outcome did we produce? What did we think we would produce?
Right.
What did we actually produce? And what are the learnings?
I'm even just thinking about my own use case. So Dr. Ralph Futerman, who's a doctor in design, and myself, we've got a consultancy and we help corporates innovate within a constrained environment right now. A big thing with innovation, great book by Clayton Christensen called Competing Against Luck. When you innovate, some people just throw it out there, spray and pray, and they hope that that innovation sticks. But that book essentially says you need to understand why people hire you, want to use your service. If you understand that why intimately, it's easier for you to innovate solutions that they'd want. So I could almost see this working in a consulting sense, for example, where I'm not guessing I'm not assuming. I've spoken to 2,000 of your clients, and you know what? They're responding to A, B, and C much better than they are to E, F, and G. Therefore, that's the route I take.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Look, we've spoken about customer centricity for decades.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of business people really mean it. Yeah. They do want to sell the products. They also want the customer to love them.
Mm.
Now, we've not been able to execute on that. So by default, most models, whether it's sales or marketing or
Right.
product development, are push-based.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Shein showed the way in clothing retailing that how do you industrialize co-creation? Because they will look at TikTok or they will place it on TikTok and say, actually, 1 million people like this dress. Then they make the dress. And lo and behold, 1 million people like the dress. They create a closed loop consumer co-creation that drives the product development and supply chain engine. This is the same. Wherever there is an outcome that matters, whether it's a commercial outcome, whether it is a societal outcome in education or healthcare or UNDP, yeah, we can measure that outcome and we can simulate whether the investment is shifting that outcome is likely to make a difference. And once we made it, we can confirm that that was right. That creates a rapid loop that really, really drives innovation. Whether it's marketing, whether it's product development, doesn't really matter, or whether it's a social good. Because we can understand what's in the mind of the consumer and whether they are likely to want something or not. And they can do that quickly and at low cost. Therefore, guesswork is out, facts are in, and co-creation is in, and both parties gain. Consumers get the products that they actually want. The people who make them, the businesses who make them, actually get the faster with less capex and less spend.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not being romantic here, but there is something appealing in that kind of win-win.
This is very interesting, Per. I want to go back to Shein, though. You gave us a little bit of an insight. What's the difference between the technologies that you've developed and use with big clients and the way Shein did it?
So Shein actually looked in what consumers really appeared to like.
Right.
And therefore predicted what they would like. That's only applicable in their particular loop. Yeah. What we've done, we generalized their thinking into anything that the consumer might desire.
Right.
We can actually model whether they are likely to like it or not. With anything, a UX journey, a pricing proposition, a subscription program, a slogan, a commercial. It doesn't matter what in our world, what we call the stimuli. We can place that in front of consumers, and at low cost, we can predict whether they're going to like it or not. And actually, it's very accurate. And when it gets it wrong, it finds out that it gets it wrong and it learns for the next time, so it gets smarter all the time. It's closed loop analytics. And our clients are just looking at this and say, I'm spending 100 million on marketing. I kind of knew the 30, 40 million of that is wasted. How about we half that? Yeah. Right. And we drive sales at the same time. Suddenly, because of the implicit waste in a system that hasn't had data before, it's not because CMOs haven't tried, they haven't had the data to allocate resources optimally.
Sure.
Now they can. And the consumer, until a new equilibrium is formed, is going to be happier. Less communication, more relevant communication, products that are better for them. Yeah. For businesses, less spend, faster time to product market fit, and better business outcomes.
Per Lagerström, always a pleasure having you on. Love your work, love your insights, and there's going to be more space here for you to teach us, actually, as you evolve. And that, once again, another edition of Innovate Africa. If you want to get hold of Per, then all you have to do is check out the email at the end of the show. Have a fabulous day, and I'll see you next week.